Can't stop scrolling? Sounds like a skill issue. Just kidding. It sounds like a you haven't found the right thing yet issue. Because I have a bold claim to make. Dungeons & Dragons might genuinely be the only hobby on Earth that can compete with doom scrolling on its own terms. And we're talking about this right now because analog is having a big moment. Half my feed right now is analog hobbies, analog bags, which us olds used to just call purses, but fine, whatever. But there's just a whole lot of put the phone down energy out there right now. The problem though? Most analog hobby advice just asks you to want less. Slow down, simplify, settle for subpar stimulation. And for some of us, never worked, not once, not ever. So today, I wanted to make the case for the one hobby that doesn't ask you to want less, but in fact just gives your brain something worth pining for. We're talking Dungeons & Dragons, why it might be the perfect antidote to doom scrolling, and why, if you've even been just a little bit curious ever in your life, right now is the best time to give it a shot. Now, if you're sitting there going, wait, what even is Dungeons & Dragons really? Yep, it's that hobby with the dice and the minis and the maps and the... Yeah, that one. The SparkNotes version is, at its core, it's a collaborative storytelling game. You and a group of friends essentially build and play through a story together. One person is reacting as the world and the people in it, and everyone else just plays a single character in it. And then the dice decide how it all goes. It's equal parts improv, strategy, chance, and complete chaos. Okay, now that you're all caught up, most suggestions for analog hobbies feel like they either rely on some idyllic view of the past or on the idea that the solution is simply slowing down. And that's exactly why trying to replace doom scrolling with these hobbies sets so many of us up for failure. You can't stop this speed machine. If you, like me, are part of Club ADHD, you already have enough half-finished piles of projects laying around everywhere. So the last thing you probably want is to risk having another one. So what actually makes D&D different from all of these other analog alternatives? Well, one of the things that makes doom scrolling so insidious is the fact that these social media companies have spent billions of dollars perfecting the ratio of novelty, connection, and micro rewards that keep us hooked. Unfortunately, the sick combo move is something that most other hobbies just can't compete with. But D&D absolutely can. Because D&D runs on that same sort of dopamine fuel as these social media platforms. There's something uniquely satisfying to our brains about coming up with a plan, playing our best, and then watching as the dice decide to make us absolute legends or ruin everything we've worked so hard for. That sort of unpredictability isn't a bug. It's what makes D&D irresistible. And that's before you even factor in the fact that there are endless adventures to run, settings to play in, and that D&D is really just the monopoly or clue of a whole category of games known as tabletop role-playing games, or TTRPGs. I just call them story games. The rabbit hole goes deep. And all this is to say, if you're looking for an analog hobby that actually fits your modern-day brain and its insatiable desires, D&D might be the one, because it doesn't try to slow you down. It actually keeps up. And if you're thinking, Stephanie, I came here with my half-knit scarves and my graveyard of dead hobbies, and you want me to read a 300-page rulebook? I get it, I really do. But I promise, getting started is much less scary than that book would have you believe. Bad book. Get out of here. Scram! Because here's the thing, whether you're interested in being the dungeon master, that's the person who runs the game, or just interested in being a player, yeah, either way, there's a big old book waiting for you. They look a little thick, a little intimidating, and I completely understand if it makes you want to close this tab right now, I really do. But those books, by and large, aren't where D&D actually starts anymore. We're living in a golden age for first-time players. Because for a lot of people, the entry point isn't a big rulebook anymore. It's your couch. Before your eyes touch a single page, You can watch actual plays. These are real tables that have recorded their sessions as either videos or podcasts, and they're perfect for the D&D curious. Because this way you can get a taste of what a session actually feels like before you invest any of your precious knitting time into learning how to play. Critical Role and Dimension 20 are the big ones that you may have even heard about already. But my personal favorite is the podcast Girls Who Don't D&D. I feel like their episodes really capture what it's like for new D&D players to get into this hobby. It feels a lot like home tables, and I think they can be hard to find anywhere else. Not to mention they get bonus points for being Australian and very funny. But if you're interested in this idea of story games as a whole beyond D&D, Mystery Quest is another great place to get started with, because they'll give you a look into the wider window of TTRPGs. Once you decide you like it though, because duh, you absolutely will, you still don't have to read a single thing! There are incredible video resources for learning how to play. Whether you want to start as a player or jump right into creating worlds and running your own adventures as a DM, there's no studying required. Unless, of course, you're a huge flippin' nerd like me. In which case, great news! There are free basic rules available online right now, so I'll link to resources below. The point is, while this hobby can absolutely become an expensive, all-consuming, beautiful obsession if you want it to, you can also start playing for the low price of free $99 plus dice stacks. Meaning you'll still probably end up buying at least 5 sets of dice because they're beautiful and that's just what happens. But yeah, free rules, a cheap set of dice, or honestly even a free dice roller app if you're not ready to commit fully to that analog bit just yet. And that's it. You're in. You're ready to get started. So I can definitely see why it might not look like it from the outside. What with the giant books and the 30 different competing subreddits, and the heated debate videos, but getting into D&D has genuinely never been easier. I promise you, anyone can do this. Here's where it really gets interesting though. Like I said earlier, every other analog hobby asks you to slow down, to do less, right? In D&D, more is always more, which means that hobby graveyard we talked about, yeah, we're bringing them back to life, baby! What if the reason those hobbies didn't stick around wasn't about you at all? What if they were just missing a container, a reason for being, a world they belonged in? Because that's what D&D becomes. Suddenly, every other hobby you've ever picked up has a purpose, an audience, a place to live. And it's amazing. So there's the obvious ones like painting minis or drawing maps or character portraits, writing backstories and lore, getting into improv and acting. But that's just the start, my friends. Do you enjoy cooking? Make some recipes based on your world's cuisine and bring them as little snacks for your table. What about pottery? You can make dice towers, dice trays, terrain pieces. One of my players actually made this one and is one of my most prized possessions. Maybe you knit or crochet. Time for some custom dice bags or knit character accessories. Are you into bookbinding? Make bespoke campaign journals, zines, or player handouts. Do you play an instrument? Try composing a tavern ballad for your bard, or ambient music you guys can play at your sessions. Look, I can literally go on forever. Try and name a hobby that I can't relate back to D&D. I dare you. Yeah, sit down. There isn't one. And that's not something I can say about literally any other hobby on Earth. And here's what makes this all even better. You don't even need a full group to start exploring this aspect of this hobby. Solo D&D is totally a thing. So if the social aspect feels like a bit too much right now, or if it's part of the reason you're leaning into analog hobbies in the first place, throw it out. Solo play is an awesome way to explore and learn this hobby at your own pace, to channel your energy into creating something meaningful, and to figure out what kind of player or DM you might want to be when or if you ever sit down at the table with other people. But whether you're playing solo or with a group, whether you're a player creating character art and writing backstories and sewing costume pieces, or you're a DM essentially running a small creative production that you could happily work in for the rest of your life, D&D doesn't just make room for your other hobbies, it makes them better. That's the magic of Hobception. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So sorry about that. D&D is your life now. My bad. Now, even if the Hobception part is intriguing, I can already see that thought kind of lingering at the back of your mind. Isn't D&D kind of for a specific type of person? the basement-dwelling, dice-hoarding, extremely passionate nerdy dude who definitely doesn't want me at his table? Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. Shout out to the basement-dwelling, dice-hoarding, nerdy, passionate dudes who do want me at their tables though. Thanks for all the fun, you're killing it. But yeah, that kind of assumption didn't come from nowhere. I came into this hobby as a former gamer girl, and between the death threats and the obscure lore quizzes and the fake geek girl accusations, surprise! That stuff doesn't exactly leave you feeling welcome in nerdy spaces. That kind of behavior definitely left me with a sour taste in my mouth. So as an adult with finite free time and many options with how to spend it, I made a completely reasonable choice to protect my peace by avoiding that shit, which almost meant missing D&D and all of the wonderful things I just told you about entirely. Personally, it feels like I just got really lucky. My introduction to D&D was a friend of mine suggesting that our normal board game night group give it a shot. So it was low pressure, people I already knew. So there was already trust there. But once I was hooked, I wanted more, which meant eventually working up the nerve to go to a local meetup on my own. And yeah, I was really nervous. All of that baggage I mentioned about my past video game experiences was very front and center for me, but it was immediately one of the most welcoming spaces I could have walked into. Shout out to Mr. Dragonbane and friends. Way to go, you guys are great. But yeah, I walked out with more game recommendations than I could count and a handful of invites to join other people's one-shots. It felt so good. And since then, I keep finding more and more corners of this community that look nothing like the stereotypical D&D player, because there really isn't one. There's people like David with beats, boards, and brushes, mixing hip-hop and mini painting with community building and nonprofit work. Most big cities have try-it nights at bars, or even specific beginner game nights. That way you don't have to be so worried about messing things up. And there are even online spaces built for specific game groups, like women-only spaces or LGBTQ+ only spaces. So if one space isn't quite right for you, it doesn't mean that none of them are. It just means you haven't found your corner yet. And if you're like me and have a similar sort of baggage, here's the thing that really makes the biggest difference. Unlike video game spaces, you actually get to 100% curate this. Nobody can yell slurs at you through a tabletop. Probably. But there's no comment section, no matchmaking throwing you in with strangers who are out to ruin your night. Your analog table is all yours. Back when I mentioned wanting to run my first game at my pottery studio, I walked out with 6 very excited players when I would have been thrilled with like 3 marginally interested people. I have a friend whose partner wanted to run a game, but wasn't sure if their skateboarder group would be into it. And I'd bet anything some of them would be. So if you told a handful of people you know that you wanted to give this a shot, I have a hunch you'd have takers. And if you're still nervous about all of this, I think the vast amount of games themselves out there should tell you everything you need to know about who's playing story games. Sure, D&D does that heroic Lord of the Rings type fantasy beautifully, but that's just one flavor of game. Want to live your best vampire life? Vampire the Masquerade. Can't resist a mystery? Call of Cthulhu goes a little supernatural. Brindlewood Bay adds a touch of Golden Girls meets Murder, She Wrote. Want to see if you'd survive in space? Alien or Mothership? These genres are just as diverse as the people playing and creating them. And I think that's really, really rad. So look, loud, gatekeepy weirdos exist in this hobby. I'm not going to lie to you or pretend that they don't. But unlike every other nerdy space I've been in, they don't get a seat at your table unless you invite them. You get to curate this, you get to choose your people. Nobody gets to decide who D&D is for or what a game looks like, except for you. So, even if nerdy spaces have let you down before, if you give D&D a shot, your people are probably out there. They might look like a local meetup that surprises you, an online space built specifically for you, or 6 people from your pottery class who are just waiting to be asked. We're here, we're finding each other, and as long as we keep being kind and welcoming and just a little bit feral, we will always be louder than the hateful assholes. So come find us. And none of that, not a single thing I just told you about. The dice, the hobception, the community requires you to want less, to slow down, or to settle for less than your brain actually craves. The only thing this hobby requires is a little curiosity and some weird shaped dice. So if I've done my job today and you're thinking about giving this a shot, here's your homework, no reading required. Thinking about DMing? Start here. Curious about how one actually tries to roleplay a character? My nerd method video has you covered. Want a rabbit hole of incredible creators to fall into? My 7 must-follow channels for DMs is an oldie, but definitely still worth a watch. Everything's also linked down below. So go have fun, go get out there, and go find your table.